I think I'm gonna cancel it. I don't fucking want to do this right now. I'm so not in a fucking mood.
You don't cancel.
I know. Oh, there's no viewers. I bet you none show up. It'd be funny. Actually, that'd be even more funny. Right? Yeah, that'll actually be more funny. I don't even care though. Because I'm just going to go over some quick shit for the first video for YouTube tomorrow, so it's fine. Actually, I don't even know if they can hear. They probably hear me clear enough. All right, everybody. This is going to be exciting. Information nobody needs, but everybody wants. So, I'm about to start my mold series. The history behind this is I've been doing molds and movie props for about 10 years. I started with Boba Fett props on a website called The Dented Helmet. It's a long story, but my stepson was wanting to make some extra money, and he liked arts and crafts, and he found some Boba Fett armor made out of Sintra, and it led us to the Dented Helmet, and that led him to losing interest and me having to finish his project. And after he started that project, I started another one, making some Boba Fett small pieces, and things just sort of careened and went downhill until I was making quite a few different mostly weapons. I made his blasters, I made his holsters, I made some helmet pieces, I made interior kits. You name it, for Boba Fett, I've dabbled in it. I've researched for hours and days and days and weeks. And it was at a time when the internet wasn't as prevalent as it is now, and it was really hard to get the information. So what I did was ask. But most of the circles that prop people use, they're not very open. They don't want to share their secrets. Well, around 3 or 4 years ago, I was doing hundreds of parts a month, hundreds of sales a month, and then I had some family stuff go on and different jobs and relocation. And I've been dabbling and doing a couple runs a year, but I just don't have the time to do it anymore. But I really like to share the information, and every time I go back and I take a look at what's going on in the prop world, it's getting worse and worse. There's very few people making some of the props I used to make, and the ones that aren't doing a great job with either communication or follow through or whatever. So this is my mold series. I want to give away the secrets that I've accumulated over the last 10 years, and I want to start really basic. So this is mold making 101, making and breaking shit. So first thing, silicones. When you're going to buy silicones, you've got two choices really for molds, at least for plastics molds. You've got a tin-based silicone and you've got a platinum-based silicone. Now the difference is a tin-based silicone is not food safe, and it's a little less expensive because of that. It has a little bit harsher chemicals in it, and it shrinks a little bit. So for things like shell molds, things that are mated to a mother mold, it's not a big deal. But when you make a really big mold and you use a tin, it's going to shrink a little bit. So if parts fitting perfectly are concerned, you want to probably go to a platinum. Now, one of the big keys though is that a tin silicone will cure over almost anything. A platinum silicone will not cure on anything. A platinum silicone is fairly picky. Anything with sulfur, quite a few other inhibitors. Inhibitors are things that won't let you make the mold. The mold will stay tacky like wet glue indefinitely. So that being said, let's talk the real basics of molds. the main things that you need when you're making a mold is a part. So in this case, this is a thermal detonator. Now, when you look at a thermal detonator or something like this, it's a very round, smooth part. It's important to know where you want your mold lines. So in this case, I made 2 or 3 molds. I made mold lines across the top here. I made a mold line that was sort of around above the equator. The problem is that you've got vertical and horizontal detail lines, and so it would be really hard to sand it without sanding down and losing those lines. So on this particular mold, the mold line, as you can see it, is on the edge here and then this up and under. So the mold line is right on this edge of this part, right on the edge. That way, when I crack it apart and I have to sand, I'm only cleaning one of these edges. Everything out comes really clean. Now, it's harder to clay up, but claying up is the process that allows your part to be clean. And claying up is probably the #1 thing that, actually it's one of 2 things that makes the difference between a good mold and a shitty mold. So that being said, we can talk about a couple of other parts. For example, this part comes out of this mold. Now, this mold was clayed up in such a fashion that this part, actually this isn't the original. The original is black for this one. Over here. It doesn't matter. This one came out of this mold. So this part has screws that act as pins for tapping the holes. So if you want to make a mold of something that has screws in it, do I have one here with some screws in it? I guess I don't. This is a good example. This is the shroud for one of my mounts. This has a hole that goes all the way through, and it's tapped, and I want it to be tapped with threads. So when I pull my part, if I pull my part, the threads with the threads inside of it, it will screw out, and this part will be tapped for a new screw. So I can essentially put this part together as an item. So this would screw into here, and it would be, it could screw all the way through, all the way out the bottom, and hold it onto the gut. So these bolts can be left in the mold like this. This would be ready to actually make a part. If I put this together and I clamp it, I can just pour plastic in here, it follows down and it vents out, and you get a part that has screws already in it that once backed out, new screws can be put in to make that part complete without having to drill and tap and glue and things like that. So this is a mount mold, and this is called a 2-piece block mold. So essentially, to make a 2-piece block mold, you need wood. So I'm going to back up a little bit, and I'm going to explain most of the things that you use and you need when you're making molds. So one is a mold box. Now, mold boxes are just what they sound like. One way to make a mold box that is convenient and probably works better than anything else is just to get strips of wood that are consistent, figure out the size you need, and cut it. So if I were doing something that was bigger, I would get a wider piece of this trim wood. I slice it into pieces, and I have one that's my base. My part gets mounted to it. Now I can mount this part to the base in a plethora of ways. I can glue it down if I only care about the top. And quite often, in quite a few of my parts, I only care about the top if they're detail pieces that get glued on. For example, a greeble that goes on the butt of one of the blasters. I only care about the top, the back can be flat, I glue it down, then I make my mold box around it. So let's pretend that this, I only cared about one side. I would make this mold box by A, taking the pieces of wood that I cut. I would lay one here. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I would glue this down. Now, because these were, at one point, pieces of the same piece of wood, they are the same width. I don't have to measure and cut this exactly like this as long as I use end-to-end pieces. So in this case, I will use an end-to-end piece for the end of my block mold. Now, if I use this as the bottom, this is my block mold, end-to-end pieces, side pieces. Now, because they're all starting as the same size, they make a perfect airtight box. You really only need one clamp. Typically you use 2 or 3 clamps, but really in this case you only need one clamp. And I'm nursing a separated shoulder, so bear with me. In this case, this mold box is ready to go right here. I tighten this down and it's airtight. Now if you don't have clamps, you can use duct tape, real duct tape, aluminum, and just tape it around. Whatever you want to do. In this case, if I glue this down and I seal this, I could simply pour silicone on top and I've got a mold. Now, for probably half the things that you're going to do in your first steps of mold making are going to be simple block molds. These are not difficult things to make. You really can't mess them up. If you have a cool part and this is what you need some wood, maybe some clay to clay it down, and silicone. Now, some silicones are brush on. So for example, a thicker platinum silicone, like a 50, like platinum 50 from Alumilite, I would brush on a paint coat. Even though it's very watery, I would brush on a paint coat to make sure I have no bubbles and no open spots in the mold. And then I would just pour the silicone in to about 3/8 to half an inch above and just let it cure. When that's done, I peel it off and I have basically this. So if I were to pour plastic just in this half, flip it over, I would have half a detonator. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to like the thermal detonator, I wanted both sides. So what I had to do was I had to clay it up to half. So I built up clay to half this inside of a box, very similar to this one. Very, very similar. I clayed it up to half, poured the top half of silicone, flipped the box over, peeled the clay out, poured silicone on top of that. Of course, you need a release agent, you need quite a few other things, and there's a couple steps in between, but you have to pour it in 2 pieces, which is why it's called a 2-piece block mold, because it comes out like a block. Now, I've had molds that have been 10, 12 pieces in order to get all of the silicones and to be able to separate it. If it's got a hole in it that's a big gaping hole, I've got a side on, it's got a split trigger, it's got all kinds of things. And I'm going to slowly go through, and as I am making these videos, I'm going to explain how to make the more difficult ones. But again, this is mold making 101. So in this case, I'm going to talk about what you really need. You need clay, and you need clay without sulfur in it. I would not use Sculpey. I would go to a mold place like Alumilite or Polytek, and I would order their clay. It's a simple oil-based clay. It is fairly pliable. I wouldn't sculpt with it. I can make small parts with it, and I have, but I wouldn't. I would only use it to clay things up and key things. So you definitely need clay. You need some sculpting tools for your clay. When I put something into this clay and I want to get the part really clean, let's just say this was put into clay, and I want it clean, you can kind of see how there's a gaping gap on one side. If I flatten this into here, press it in with this tool, and I really work on this edge line, and I really get it clean, and I use this flatten, it's called a spade tool, and I use this spade tool and I make a really nice separation, clean line like this. This type of a line is gonna separate much cleaner than just pushing it into the clay or having an angled line, like having it angled up or having it angled down. And so what this is going to do is this is going to allow, when you pop the mold apart, you're just going to have a little bitty fine line right here that with just an X-Acto knife or a piece of or a quick couple swipes with sandpaper, and it's gone, and it looks exactly like your original part. So you can see these two. These were cast off each other. This white one's the original, the black one's the cast. So you can see there's almost no mold line there. There's almost no difference in these parts, except this is one of the first pulls, so there's a little bit of blue clay left on it from where the mold wasn't cleaned yet. I always pull one part to get all the extra clay out without mold release. You can see though that really it's an exact duplicate. Now where this comes in handy is if you're making something, say for on your 3D printer. Say your Iron Man has 4 shapes on the stomach that are all the exact same shape. Okay? So you print one, you pour a block mold, and you make 4 or 5 more in 10 minutes, and now you're done instead of printing for 4 days. Now, you can also create things with your plastic that are flat. You could, say, cut out a piece of cardboard into the shape you wanted. You could pour your mold on flat. You could pop it out of the mold while it's still hot and it's still malleable, still sort of pliable, and you can bend it and you can keep it in that shape, and you can make armor plates that wrap around things. These are all things that mold making can sort of meld the different prop making and kind of hobby things we've got going on these days. I mean, there's so many different things that people are doing that they don't realize that the mold making is sort of getting lost, and this is the easiest way to replicate. Now, this aluminum tape is something that I use for almost everything, because I don't know if you've ever seen real duct tape, but that's what this is. This is made of aluminum. So this stuff, not only does it stick and it's watertight and it sticks as good as any tape ever on anything, it's also rigid and can make shapes. So if I want to make a small mold box, I can do that out of this aluminum tape, and this will be strong enough to hold water, to hold clay, to hold anything at the bottom. So I can make a mold box out of this without cutting a bunch of wood. I can just use it on cardboard, and I can make a mold box that will probably speed up your process by 50%, but there are some caveats to remember here. So let's just say that this was a full mold box, and I was going to pour silicone into it. Let's say it's a square, and I'm going to pour silicone into it. The problem with these types of mold boxes, or the good thing about these mold boxes, they're super quick and they're super cheap, and you're done. So, you lay your part in it, and you pour your part, and it's done. And it's super easy for a super quick part. The problems are, if you're doing a 2-piece mold, you have nothing when you flip it over. You have no container. So it's not good for a 2-piece mold. It is fine with tin, but the sticky, whatever they use on this glue, will always inhibit platinum and sometimes tin. So you can only use the shiny side. Now, a sealer, like Alumilite's UMR, like this, if you use UMR in a part that would normally inhibit silicone, this UMR will stop that inhibition. Let me look here. So, oh, hey, JC. Hey, Chan. I don't know if you're talking to me or each other, but I'm going to go on. If you have a question for me, put a question mark in front of your question. So, if I'm making this out of tape, it's really for a quick throwaway mold. A lot of times I'll make a quick mold of something, and I'll take that part and I'll modify it, and once I get it how I want it, then I'll make a much better mold. So this, though, is something that everybody should have in their workshop. So clay and tape, wood, clamps. Now, these tools, you can use a butter knife, you can use a piece of metal, you can use plastics, you can use almost anything. When I'm using, I buy up small pieces of aluminum and for making pins, because when I'm claying up a part like this, claying up around something with threads makes for sort of a dirty pull. So for the mold, I'll put a pin with no threads in it like this. And then when I get ready to make the part, I'll put a pin with threads in it. That difference will, when the parts are being pulled, you can see, like on this one, this is a throwaway, but you can see that it's not quite clean around this section. That's because I use threads and not a pin. If I'd used a pin, I would have got it much cleaner and it wouldn't have that. Now, ultimately, that's not much cleanup, but it's enough to make a difference. So these are good to have in your shop. X-Acto makes some items that are good for moving clay around. You can flatten things, sharpen things, edge things. It works great. This is one of my other favorite tools for cleaning up my molds and sculpting, because whatever I do with it, the cleaner I get these edges, ultimately the cleaner the parts get. A scale helps if you're going to do silicones. You can do some by volumes. You don't do very many of them with volume. So wood is probably the best option. So JC just asked if wood is the best option for a mold box. Ultimately, if you're going to reuse it, wood is the best option. And it's handy because, so I've made this mold, right? I've made it in my mold box and I'm done. And now it's time to pull the part, right? So now I have this part that came out of this mold box that was made with these, right? And I need to pull this part. So I put my pins in, I put it together. I'm going to need to clamp these together. And if you watch, you see that little gap in here? If I don't use a clamp on it, the gap doesn't get sealed. And it's going to leave a much wider release on it. It's going to end up basically leaving a really ugly gaping piece of plastic on the part that gets cut off and leaves a bad release line. So if you make your part out of wood, you can always reuse these. Now, a lot of times I'll put notes on here, like let's say this part, I'll write front mount, right? And nobody will be able to read it but me. And then I'll say 3 ounces RC3. So I know it's 3 ounces to make this part. So now I know, right? And I can say this is the left side. And then I can mark the other piece of wood. Now I always know that these pieces of wood are perfect for this. You know, sometimes you'll end up you'll have to cut your wood and you'll put a hole through here for your pin to go through. You do a bunch of things like that. Lexon's good. Some Lexon has vinyl sheets on it. And if the vinyl sheets if they inhibit the silicone, then you're going to have problems. So you always want to take and mix just a little bit of silicone, take it around your shop or wherever you work, and test it on things. Just put a little on your scale, put a little on this wood, put a little on your clay, put a little on the base of your gun. Like here's the Webley base, you know. So I don't know for sure. If I just bought this, I wouldn't know for sure what oil they use to keep it from rusting. I wouldn't know what they put on the stock. So if I don't test it first, then I won't know if it'll inhibit. The same thing with Lexon. If you want to use Lexon and it's thick, sounds great. But remember that thick Lexon is way more expensive. You can buy a 20-foot piece of this wood for about 12 bucks. Half-inch Lexon's plenty thick and it's great. I would use that if it were less expensive than wood and if it was, I guess, easier to get a hold of. I've got a few pieces of Lexon, but I haven't used them for a long time. Now the plus on Lexon is if you put mold release or you put Vaseline on your Lexon before you pull your part, nothing sticks to it. It's perfect. You'll have to come get it in person. Actually, the Webley may end up for sale here in the next year or so. It's still in great shape, and I've still got all the parts, but I'm not going to be making too many more molds, so we'll have to see what happens there. Anyways, back to where we're at. So you're definitely going to need wood for mold boxes. You're gonna need a lot of patience, and you're not gonna. Mostly, you're gonna have some courage, because some of the things we're gonna do in the shop are gonna turn out horrible. I don't know how much I'm gonna live stream as a host, so much as turn on the stream and work. People that want to work or follow along while I'm working in here, I'll have it set up to ask questions and answer, but I'm probably not going to try to host this like it's a show, because frankly, making molds is a little bit boring. So to end this, I'm not going to make a mold right now. I'm going to talk about claying up for 10 seconds, maybe 2 minutes of claying up, and then some other options. So let's say I want to make a mold of this piece here. And let's pretend I made a mold box around this, but you won't be able to see, so I'm gonna just do it here. So first I've got to lay my clay out. And actually I'm going to show you a little differently. I'm going to flatten this. This is how I made these other molds, so I'm going to show you really quick. I'm not going to finish it, I'm just going to show you. So these new mount molds, you make it, you slap it down, and I know roughly how thick my mold is. That comes up to about, or my part is, that comes out to about half, right? So I take the part I want to make, and I would normally cover this entirely in the blue clay, so you got to move it around. This takes 10-15 minutes to get all your clay perfect. I make an imprint of my part like this, right? I take my X-Acto, I cut it out so I can put my part into it. Again, none of this is rocket science. None of this should make you scared. And then once I have what I need and I have the place for it, I can push the part in, and I've got a fairly decent part embedded in clay. Now from here, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to push this clay in with my knife, and I'm going to try to get this as clean and as sharp as possible. And this is where all the time is going to come in claying up. So once I have this exactly how I want it all the way around, and I have all the clay filled into these spots, I now have the bottom half of the mold, and I can physically pour this part. Now, pouring the part's not difficult. Pouring the part is literally, you weigh the silicone, say it's 10-to-1, you weigh 100 parts silicone, and then you put in 10 parts catalyst, you stir it up for 2 minutes, and you pour it over the top. And that's literally all there is to making this mold. Now, I just need to talk a little bit more about this clay. This is not, and I repeat, this is not a finished clay up. After you clay it, you're going to put a couple keys in it, like this, right? And these keys, then again, this is super fast. These keys will fill with silicone, and this is what holds the two parts together so they stay perfectly formed, so your part comes out perfect. So first thing you're going to do is use your knife to try to get a nice clean line everywhere. Once you get it so it's mated down, you can actually slice and clean and slice and clean, and this is going to be the time consuming part, but now you can see how clean that line is right there in that edge. That line being clean like that is one of the secrets to my parts being cleaner than everybody else's. They don't take enough time on this step. This step is key to everything. Now, let's say I'm going to make something and I'm not sure, like this right here. So let's say we want to make a mold box for that. So we take it and we box it and we clay it, but we don't necessarily have to on this. So I was sitting around earlier thinking, how am I going to make this mold box? And when I decided how I was going to make it, I decided that's something that I should show on the stream, because this is something that people will be interested in. So I know I have a pin in it, and I know the pin's metal, and I know that if I slice the end mold on the bottom side, I can twist it to pop the part out. So I can do this in one piece, and I can have all the mold. I can pour from the center and then push the screw into it, and I'm done. So I know those things already. But how do I make this mold box? Should I glue this down? I could drill a hole through this box and put a long screw through it and screw it onto it. That would work great. Then I could build the box. So instead, I glued a magnet into a cup, I screwed the screw in, and I stick it in. And so now I have it mounted in the middle of this. So I can literally pour the silicone and I'm done. That's how quick this mold box was. I cut the top off a cup, I glued a magnet in the bottom, and I stuck the screw in. These are the things that take time to understand that you can actually do. So we've now gone from a basic one-part mold to a block mold to a clay up on a block mold to a single part mold, just sort of winging it. And so that's what we did. Now, when it gets to something like this, I've sat and stared at this for a day now, and I know how I can make a mold, and none of them are going to be pretty because it's going to take me hours and hours to make a mold for this little 10-cent part. So it's back to the drawing board. This one even has me stumped at how I can do it efficiently. I know I can do it, but not necessarily efficiently. So that's really it for Mold Making 101. So if you want to order stuff, I suggest Alumilite UMR, this clay, which is $2.50 to $5 for a thing of it, and you can do a lot of parts with it. Probably their HS30, their high strength 30, HS2 or HS3 is what it's called. This super resilient silicone, you really can barely even tear it. I mean, it's super resilient for paper thin. It's got tear strength to it. So this is probably the cheapest and the best way to learn, and this cures on anything, but it's going to shrink a little. So if you're making boxes, and you're going to do your like electronics, if you make electronics that have boards that need to slide in, you're going to make like a mold for those types of things. You're going to need to make it with a little bit of space because you're going to get 3 or 4% shrinkage in this type of silicone. If you order those 3 things, you can get started right away. If you call Alumilite and just tell them that Mike Mason or Stormrider or whatever you want to say, you got it on their stream, they will help you over the phone and get you the things you need. And if you want to try samples, they'll typically send them to you. Alumilite and Polytek are the only 2 companies that I really deal with now for silicones and mold making because they tend to answer questions. They tend to really stand behind their products, and they're never accusatory when you have a problem. Now, I cannot say that much for Smooth On. I don't really have any good things to say for Smooth On, except some of their soft foams were good for a while, and I used them for quite a while, but the customer service and their understanding, it was lacking. So I'm going to turn this into a video for YouTube to start. It's going to be condensed down to 3 or 4 minutes, and then I'm going to actually build a couple of these molds, and for the most part I'm going to just stream when I'm playing up making my molds and answer questions a couple times a week. And I'm going to start on my transformer build a couple times a week, where I'll be doing fabrication with EVA foam, gluing EVA foam, making temp throwaway molds for all the parts. It's going to be some of the things that I do on some of the days. It's not going to be really exciting. I don't really think this is suited for live streaming. I'm doing this at this point because I can make a live stream and I can know what I worked on, and then I can edit it down into a tutorial video. But if people want to stop in and see how I do things or ask questions, there's going to be a time when I do, for example, when I do the mold for this, the Webley barrel. I've been making a Webley barrel mold that has no seam lines on it for years, and no one knows how I did it, and I didn't share it. And because I don't have time to keep reproducing these parts, and I don't want the other makers of these guns, once I stop making them, to gouge people, I am going to give all my secrets away. I'm going to show people how I do all my special molds, like my holster mold, my Webley mold. My signature kit for my Webley is going to be every single piece exactly as it is on the real gun. All the internal pieces. The main body is going to be opened up with pins in every hole. It's going to have all the openings. It's going to have a working trigger and a working hammer. It's going to be the last mold I make of this gun before retiring it. So I'll probably announce when I'm going to do the next stream. I don't know if they're going to be interactive. Squeal? Squee? Don't know what you mean. I was wondering how the keys were done. JSC asked. Yeah, Chan, it's a great tip. It's one of those things that just kind of happens when you drop some shit in a cup and it sticks and it stands straight up and you go, wow, I can use that. So yeah, that's about it. Who do we have on the stream right now? We got JC, we got Chan. Who else is in here? Anybody? I'm telling you, man, the new mold. I don't know if you can tell how these new mounts look, but they're fully functional. A bolt goes in here to hold it tight on the thing. A screw goes in to hold the shroud on. The screw goes all the way through the bottom to press on your barrel. The front mount has two holes that are threaded that can go through your shroud, or I'm sorry, through your flash suppressor or the Graflex if you want. It'll go through, and then I'm going to make a piece that it secures to inside of it so it doesn't move. It's got the same thing with the screw-on shroud. The screw comes out the bottom to pinch. I mean, these things are fully functional. There's no gluing. I'm going to make a pin system that you can use to put your Molex on. So you'll I decided to use these, and this is going to be kind of goofy sounding, but I think it's going to work. So I'm going to use furniture pins. The furniture pins are going to go into this in a preset hole, and then you'll just screw a little hole or drill a little hole in your Molex, and you can glue it onto that pin so there's no more lost Molex, because Molex get knocked off of guns all the time. So really, this entire section, and then, so this is your shroud, right? So let me show you here. And this is not one of the final ones, so this is going to not work exactly like you'd expect because they're not tapped all the way. But let me show you. This is pretty cool. So this goes on here like this. This gets tapped through the shroud, gets tapped into here. So this literally screws in, and it's tight, and it's on there, and it doesn't move. Once you tighten that down, you now have a bolted mount system, right? And then your actual mounts actually clip to it. So this will be tapped with a screw, right? So now this will hold your barrel, and this holds it on here. So each screw does something different. So if your barrel's a little smaller, it's fine. If it's a little bigger, it'll still flex. So once this is on, this can all be taken back off with these screws, which is the whole reason for this mounting system, right? So you'll put a set screw all the way through to start to come out here before you put the top on. You'll screw that set screw in, and it will go right onto the gun like this, and another screw will go here to hold this, and it will not move. I can pick this 10-pound barrel up by that. It will not break. It's reinforced. This is the real deal now for the way this system is going to work. And then of course the front mount is the same way, and it hooks onto your Graflex. And these mounts, when I printed them, this isn't the most recent. Let me find it. I stuck it somewhere. These are the actual masters I used. So as you can see, this mount is now the exact thickness of the barrel, and it has screws that come through, and screws go through your Graflex, and then you put a piece of wire on it, and it's identical exactly. The resin for the scope mounts won't break. I mean, you shouldn't be able to really take one of these off. I mean, I can, let's just say this one here, I can pry them this far apart. So this is, and it'll go all the way together. If I put this on here, when I put this on, oops, I gotta cut this. Hold on a second. This one's a throwaway because it has a bubble. Literally, there's no more bubbles in the mounts. Sometimes if my plastic is starting to harden, it's extra plastic, I'll throw it in to test something, which is what happened here, which is why this one looks like this, but this is just a throwaway, so I'm going to just destroy it. So you really can't break it. You see that? I mean, as hard as I can push it, I can clamp it. And it's not going to break. It'll flex, but it's not breaking. And it's not coming off of there no matter what I do. So this is no joke. I mean, I can flex it all the way up if I wanted it all the way up there. And I can bring it down as far as this close to the end. So depending on what gun people have and whose barrel it was and how well they cast it, it's great. Now, the key here, that's probably more important than that, is that this is probably too big, but we're going to give it a shot. We're going to give it the old college try. Right? And so I guess we're done with the mold making portion. Was it one of my mounts, JC? Yeah, I'll send you a new one. You break the front and the back one. I'll send you a test set of the new ones. They're pretty impressive. I think people are going to be really surprised at what I've done this time. What do you think? So this is just a temp screw, but as you can see, once that's on, it's not coming off of there. It'll go around, but it's not coming off. And I can tighten that down as tight as I want, and all it'll do is flex. So this is the real deal when it comes to the mounts, because there's no more gluing to your gun. Yep, I can send you a set of back ones, because it seems like you're probably going to get the thermal detonator. So, that being said, this is ready to get edited down. Thanks for stopping in. It gave me somebody to talk to. I'm going to be working on this new kit all weekend. I'm hoping to have half of these molds done this weekend. I'll have 3 or 4 YouTube videos out as I work on each mold. I'm going to break them down. I'll probably turn the stream on, but not pay too much attention to it. But I should be able to get at least half of this gun molded this weekend and get parts start to come out. But I'm really excited for these mounts. I'm going to put these up for sale just as a standalone part, because I think that these are the most accurate and functional mounts that you can find anywhere now. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people replacing theirs. So there's nobody else on the stream, right? Just Shannon, JC. So the new EE3 is going to be fairly close to my old price. Here's the thing. It's going to take me twice as much silicone. It's going to be the same amount of plastic, but twice as much silicone, because instead of doing this as all one section now, I'm doing these in individual pieces. I'm still going to reinforce this bracket. I'm going to do I'm not going to do a wood stock anymore, because I really don't like Woodman's stocks and the way he did them. I just don't think he's doing a good job. I think that he's too busy to really I think he's just too busy. The price on this is going to be under $300. The old price is around $250. This one will still stay under $300, but it's going to have all individual parts. The gun itself is going to be hollow in here, and it's going to be able to take the trigger and hammer system, so you can make a movable functional trigger. The stock is going to hopefully be hollow, so it'll be both lightened and functional as a stock. The barrel is going to be the same barrel that I've always used, but I'm going to do it in platinum silicone instead of tin, which means there won't be any shrinking and there won't be any beveling to the barrel because of the way it had to sit. All of my greeble pieces are going to be redone. I think that I'm going to redo them, and I'm going to have double-sided. The barrel will be hollow just like the old ones. It should be perfectly hollow, and it should be able to fit a chamber. So if you're going to put your electronics in it and you want to put batteries or store your wallet or credit cards or anything in the stock of the gun, that shouldn't be a problem either. But I'm guessing the price is going to be between $250 and $300. I'm going to offer discounts to people who follow the stream and subscribe and stuff on YouTube. Should be a good time. So I'd like to see your sound system. I mean, maybe we can trade out a sound system for one of these guns, because I think that if I show it on stream once I get the gun, as I make each of the parts, as I build the molds and I pour the parts and I start to piece this gun together, I'm going to finish it, as part of the stream and tutorial to show, how it starts, what has to be done. It might be good to put one of your electronic systems in it. So let me know what the price of that is. Oh, it's the first time? That's cool. So it's super cool. Normally Twitch live streams are games and stuff like that. This is, like I said, this is a little bit difficult to keep interesting. A lot of people stop in and they're bored to death and they split, and I don't blame them, because I've almost split in the middle of it. It's so boring. But you get the idea. If I've got to work, I might as well have it going. Somebody might as well learn the secret. Somebody might as well take over. All right, so we have 4 viewers right now. The stream is pretty much over. Who all's in here? Does anybody have a roll call here? I know JC's in here. I know Chan's in here. I can't really see who else is in here. Do you have one of your old sound systems? All right, well, while the sound's catching up, I'm going to go ahead and buckle this up. If you missed it and you're coming in here late, take a note. Try Polytek and Alumilite. They're awesome. Tomorrow, probably during the day, I'll probably do either the mold for the body of the gun or some of the smaller parts, and do the full molds now that I have the camera set, so it's much easier to see what's going on and it's easy for me to show things. And yeah, that's about it. What do we got here as I sign off? Well, come on, man. Be somebody. Get in gear. I need one of these electronics kits. You can't sit there and talk about them and not have them. What are you doing? All right. So JC was the only one here the entire time. So JC, PM me your address. I'll shoot you a thermal detonator. And I'll throw in a set of these mounts with it, because I know you need them. I know yours broke. I don't think anybody else is in here right now. If they are, they're not chatting. I can't see them in the chat room. Yeah, TK, they're all going to be on YouTube. You can actually go back in Twitch on my channel and click on videos. Oh, that sucks, man. That's okay. I appreciate you showing up. I'll tell you what, PM me your address and I'll shoot you a thermal detonator too. You and JC can get them. I was going to give out up to 3 anyways. I might as well make 2. So I'll make those tomorrow. They look just like this. You can catch the entire stream in my videos log, or you can watch them on. I'm going to probably edit this down and do, real succinct with some captions to say exactly, what's needed to do the basic types of molds and how they work. And I'll put the entire videos on YouTube to follow up on that. But check out some of the other streams. I've done some claying up, some actual claying up without talking about it. I poured a few parts. There's a few other videos on here where I've done live streams for testing, but I didn't have the cameras in a way where I felt like I could really show people what was going on and have them be able to see it. So now that I have these cameras in the right place, I'm pretty happy with it. People can actually see what's going on. I can actually pass on some of this info. So both of you guys, thanks for stopping in. Oh yeah, they'll be here all the time. So I'm not an affiliate, and I don't know if I'm going to make affiliate, because you've got to have three people watching your videos at all times for like 10 hours or something, or average 3 times simultaneous viewers, and then my videos will stay for 6 weeks instead of 2. So right now, this video will be gone from here in 2 weeks, but they'll be back on YouTube probably in the next couple days. So I'm pulling those down, I'm editing them, I'm setting them up. So JC, thanks for stopping in. TK, Chan, thanks for stopping in. Shoot me a PM, give me your address. I'll shoot you guys a thermal detonator. I'm going to pull those tomorrow. JC, I will get you that new rear mount for the one you broke. Stop back in, ask questions, say hi. You don't even have to stay the whole time. Deuces, be somebody, would ya? Come on, would ya?